Hello, and welcome to this Analyst Angle discussing practical applications of private 5G, Wi-Fi 7, and hybrid wireless environments. I'm Bob Laliberte, the Principal Analyst with theCUBE Research, and today I'm joined by a trio of experts from STEP, which is an engineering think tank and services firm. We're lucky to have Ed Walton, their CEO, Todd Kelly, their CTO, and Bill Krutke, their solution architect. Welcome, gentlemen.
Oh, thanks, Bob.
Hey, Bob. How you doing?
Yeah, doing great. I'm glad. I know Ed and Bill, you're both CUBE alumni. And Bill, this is your first time, so welcome. We're super excited to have you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Excited to be here.
Yeah, so this is great. I'm looking forward to this session. I know we're going to be exploring how these, hybrid wireless architectures are being used in different verticals in the field and so forth, right? Looking at large public events to really remote sites, how some of the portable platforms, like people have heard of cows, that's cellular on wheels, and now also you have a new Rover to enable connectivity in these hard to reach locations. And I think we're also going to touch upon how technology, from multiple different vendors is helping to shape this space, what it all means for enterprises across multiple different verticals who are really trying to modernize their wireless environments. So with all that said, let's get into it by providing a little bit of context. Starting a couple of years ago, there was a lot of hype around 5G, private 5G deployments. I'm wondering from your vantage point, I know you've done a lot of these, where's the private 5G market today, and how do you see the vendor landscape evolving? And maybe you'll start with you, Ed, and then we'll work through Todd and Bill.
Yeah, I would say it continues to evolve, and we're big believers in the hybrid network. So it's not an either or from a Wi-Fi or Wi-Fi 7 and private cellular. It's an and I do want to, I think it's been slow to develop, much slower than we thought, but we're really seeing a pickup in momentum. And I think that's due a little bit to the changing vendor landscape and how they're approaching the market and the opportunities we're seeing. And then, other vertical segments emerging. I mean, we were always, we've deployed in large manufacturing, warehouse, logistics, campus environments, and so forth. But we're starting to see some emerging use cases and some new verticals, and those would be like healthcare and construction and so forth.
Excellent. Todd, what do you see?
Yeah, I think it is, and that is growing as fast as we want. But we've learned a lot about the technology, and we were spending the last several years educating people on it, and we still are doing some of that. But I think now it's where do I apply it, and how? So we're finding very key verticals. Enterprise, traditional enterprise has use cases, oil and gas, manufacturing. We deal a lot also, Bob, in the full context of this conversation is mainly in the US. So we do largely deal with private 5G in the context of what the CBRS spectrum is. But we're also seeing some uses in licensed spectrum in a private context where the carriers will license some spectrum for certain customers as well. But the vendor landscape is evolving more in the enterprise with the recent announcement from HPE, which we're also excited about. So it's becoming more of an extension of the network versus a parallel kind of infrastructure investment. And that's kind of exciting. We'll talk more about that.
Oh, that sounds great. And Bill, anything you want to add?
I agree with them. The tone has completely changed from an enterprise perspective, right? And people are starting to understand the difference of those type of workflows. And I think that's really kind of coming apparent as these companies are starting to pay attention of how to be more efficient.
Got it. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. Todd, you touched upon some of the vendors that are making moves and so forth. I'm wondering if you could highlight maybe, some of I know Nokia, Ericsson, there's HPE, Athonet, Solona. How are those vendors starting to reshape opportunities for partners like yourself?
Yeah, and there's a few more too that that are all kind of playing in this space. But I think everybody's realizing the value of having it be managed like an enterprise infrastructure. So obviously Nokia's had some news in their shift in priorities, I would say, but where they focus their energies. They're obviously a telecom company. Ericsson is a telecom company by core, but it's also playing in enterprise. And then you have these enterprise kind of focused, private 5G vendors like Solona, HPE now, and as well as a few others. So we're seeing more of the enterprise grade have more success, the cost and the simplicity to integrate. So they have large integration partnerships with a lot of the enterprise infrastructure, security, and whatnot. And so all of them have kind of their certain use cases. The telecom grade stuff is your gold standard. So for mission critical, lights out almost operations, those are some of the best quality products you can get because it's the same radios that are used on the macro network, Bob. So we're excited though. The enterprise stuff is very good, works very well, has a long lifespan, and very manageable. Yeah. So that's kind of, I don't know, Bill, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that I notice is that turnkey change. They're creating those turnkey solutions because they are actually seeing that is actually needed, right? As you go forward from a segmentation perspective, from how you're actually going to utilize it to get that real-time data, opening up that spectrum. I think a lot of vendors are starting to consolidate that and make it simple going forward, especially for everything that comes into play. From a whole network enterprise mobility perspective, from all the way to the firewall, all the way back. And I see a lot of customers looking at it from a whole stack, but also understanding it from a whole stack.
Yeah, I think what you just mentioned, Bill, is so critical because this, and Bill, you mentioned this as well, it's that transformation from sort of a telco only play to enabling the enterprise to be able to deploy it. And so the more you can make private 5G look like your Wi-Fi environment, the easier it's going to be for organizations to be able to adopt and use it. And ultimately, what I hear from a lot of enterprises is that ultimately want to have that ability to have a unified management of that entire wireless space, whether it be private 5G or Wi-Fi.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. Now, there's definitely one thing. I remember when I first met Ed and we were talking, he was telling me about the cows or the cellular on wheels. And while that is cool, and I've seen them from Verizon and others, what was really cool is that you actually deploy them at, I think it's the Kentucky Bourbon Festival. And you've done so for the last couple of years. And this has sort of been this kind of, living laboratory for this hybrid network. I'm wondering if you could walk us through that deployment and, what it tells us about delivering that wireless connectivity in a real world high density environment. I don't even know how many people attend this, but I'm assuming it's going from 0 to a very large number over the weekend and then back to 0.
Yeah, we got to get you out there, Bob. It's an amazing festival, and Bardstown's the bourbon capital of the world. So it's a $9 billion industry in Kentucky. And, they have this celebration of bourbon over 4 days. Usually it's in mid-September. I think it's the first week of September, right after Labor Day coming up, or maybe right before. But yeah, we've been providing the connectivity there for the last 3-4 years, actually. And it really is, it keeps growing and it keeps getting, in my opinion, better. It's a really cool festival. It's high end. It's probably 50 to 75,000 people over those 4 days. And then it's roughly about 70 plus distillers. So all the bourbon distillers kind of set up their own villages. They're selling, not just bourbon and whiskey and the spirits, but also, everything else that got from shirts, hats, swag, and all that. So as you walk around, what we're doing there is it's really a demonstration of what we talk about, hybrid connectivity. So it's traditional Wi-Fi. It's got some wired elements. It's a lot of private cellular. It's about a 3-mile radius around Bardstown that we provide connectivity for. And as you go in there, you get a wristband that tracks its RFID. Everywhere you go in the festival grounds, it tracks where you're at and kind of, in a lot of ways what you're doing. So there's big data behind it as well. So for the people coming in, they want to have a real good experience, being able to get on Wi-Fi, take pictures, get information, and so forth. And then the operators want to be able to provide, slices of bandwidth that are secure and private for all the distillers. And they want to make sure that the media is there, there's video, social media, anything that goes on within that festival be it someone attending or on the back end, an operator or a vendor that's participating or a distiller, that they have the connectivity and that the network really is transparent. They can do everything they want to do. We have fun with it because our Cider on Wheels is wrapped like, I'm from Wisconsin. It's like a Wisconsin cow, has a no tipping sign on it. And what we're seeing is a lot of the distillers are doing what we're doing at the festival, and that they're really modernizing their operations and saying, you know what, instead of running fiber or traditional technologies out to our rick houses, and as you're coming into Bardstown, you see hundreds of rick houses, beautiful campuses, facilities, farms. They're running private cellular out to those rick houses and then running Wi-Fi within those rick houses. And then they're tracking the barrels, QR codes, NFT tagging. And then one of our big success stories is the Whiskey House. That's an AI-powered operations there. It's about 80-90% automated as far as the bourbon distilling process. It's like the NASA of bourbon. It's the most advanced technology operation, on the planet from a bourbon distilling, and it's really cool what they're doing there. But they realize they need a hybrid network, right? It's not either or. It's like, how do I implement private cellular and Wi-Fi? It's the right connectivity for the right service and application and device, whatever that might be. So that's a great story, and we're kind of seeing that play out across the industry. But that's a big showcase for us. And then, these guys can chime in, but we've really taken that cow, we call that our fat cow, and we've made a skinny cow. And that skinny cow, we take to a whole new verticals from a hybrid network and combine all the technologies in a little bit, I guess, easier to digest format, a little more affordable. But it's really transformative for some new vertical markets like construction and so forth.
Got it. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. So you're doing public Wi-Fi, private 5G slices, RFID. I'm sure there's some video.
Yeah, video security as well.
And so forth, right? Yeah. And that's all off the cow.
It's all off the cow. You just can't tip it over, Bob.
That would be bad. Tipping it over would be bad.
Yeah, we're also doing SD-WAN on the uplinks for the internet connectivity and a full stack security and video surveillance, and then a enterprise grade Wi-Fi experience across the whole campus environment. So there's no handoffs or challenges as you move around on the Wi-Fi side. Serving public Wi-Fi as well as private Wi-Fi for some with the gateways and some of those all the little villages where they sell their bourbon and stuff for point of sale.
Got it. And so what I was curious about when I heard about it, and obviously you had a huge number of folks attending and so forth, what did you learn about the user experience that they had, performance? You said obviously you were tracking RFID where they were going. You were looking at what they could, not their specific things, what they're looking, but what websites were accessed. So is there anything you can share about what kind of experiences they had, the performances, and from an operational standpoint, how hard it was to manage that deployment for those 4 days?
Bill, you want to comment?
Yeah. I
Go
can
ahead.
take that. Yeah. It's inside.
Yeah.
We really came in there and attacked it. The one thing I would say with the experience, it's growing all the time, just like Ed said. And I think the part of having that flexibility with the cow and able to create what we can create where it's at and try to simplify it with the security, with everything that it needs, the experience has been improved. Basically, because we're able to architect it appropriately. We can put certain systems onto the 5G solution and certain systems onto the Wi-Fi, right? So by opening up that spectrum and making it simple, it's easy to where we can create that seamless roam between each of those tents as they go through it, as well as maintain that security from a camera perspective. That was one of the biggest things, was they added a lot more cameras this year. And it was pretty cool to see it just function seamlessly with no problems, no experience that really kind of popped up to say, hey, there's a big problem here, we need to fix that. Having that flexibility with it was amazing. And every year we're always looking to advance that because it keeps on growing, man. It just keeps on growing.
Yeah, and I'm glad to hear you've got the video security to make sure that you can see in case someone's trying to tip the cow over.
Yeah, that's all.
Press that right away.
I think we even get an alert.
Yeah, especially as the day goes on and people are sampling more and more of the bourbon.
Yeah.
Ed, you mentioned the skinny cow, and I believe the technical name you have, or the official name for the skinny cow, is the Rover. And it seems kind of like this evolutionary offshoot of the cow concept, but it's lighter, it's more mobile, and as you mentioned, it's aimed at verticals like construction and engineering firms. Can you talk a little bit about the Rover and why it's generating such strong interest from customers?
Yeah, I think when we get involved with customers, what we like to say is, hey, just talk about what you're trying to do and where's your biggest pain point. And we've got involved with some of the largest construction engineering firms, that you'll find anywhere. And what we found is, at a construction site, and some of these sites can be 3 to 5 miles. I mean, they're huge in scope. And it is such a problem and pain and so costly for them to have consistent, reliable, and secure connectivity. And they really don't, if they don't have to, because they might be out in the middle of nowhere, they don't want to run fiber, right? And they don't have any good options in there. What we did with the cow was we took our cow, with the fat cow, we kind of skinnied it down. And the Rover is really a ruggedized, self-sustaining solution. It's solar powered. You can run land power. You can have a generator. Well, we took all the technologies from a private cellular, from a traditional Wi-Fi standpoint, video security, all these different things, and we put it into a mobile format on wheels. And we could put these at a construction site and immediately get everything connected, from handhelds, tablets, cameras. And if you think about it, everything at a construction site, like cranes, pile drivers, the heavy machinery that are very expensive, if that stuff's not working or being put to use, or if they can't transmit large architectural drawings, you name it, that's a big, big cost. So what we did was we took the Rover out. We actually have two on site at a very large construction site, actually in Wisconsin right now. And, they're like, holy cow, this, like, no, excuse the, say that, but holy cow, the fun there, this solid door connectivity issue is like, this thing is transformative. Now we can put everybody on the network. It might be traditional Wi-Fi. We can also, just like the Bourbon Fest, get private slices of, cellular to things that will take a SIM card, put that on a private cellular network, video security. We actually are monitoring this. So it's a managed service for us. And as you see the changing vendor landscape, just tied to that, there is such a services opportunity for STEP. And we're seeing that behind Salona, behind HPE, certainly behind Ericsson, that, for partners to get into this, it's a very significant investment. But we're doing a lot behind other partners you might have a relationship with customers to provide the end-to-end solution where we can do all the services and support. And then we have a monitoring and managed service specifically for all our solutions, but for this Rover on site, where we can actually give the customer visibility. Is it up? It's down? What's connecting to it? Where the bandwidth is going? But if you take away, and that's what we like to do, is make the network invisible, right? We're the plumbers. We'll put in the right hybrid connectivity for what you're trying to do at that site. It takes away the pain of downtime and not being able to be connected, but it also enables everything they want to do from an AI, robotics, augmented reality. Now the world opens up because they have the connectivity and they have the right bandwidth and low latency that they need. The Rover is a really cool product. It's I think I sent you a picture of it out at a national park, Yosemite, in front of El Capitan, where they were testing connectivity. And, it's got so many applications, we think, beyond construction and engineering, any campus, even in a hospital parking lot, anywhere where you got to bring bandwidth and connectivity to a site, and you can't normally get connectivity there and you don't want to run fiber. The Rover is a sweet solution for that. But these guys can comment as well, but we're really getting very positive feedback. And some of these folks we're working with, they're like, we're not going to open up another site without having enough Rovers there to provide connectivity.
Very good. Yeah, I think, and if I'm not mistaken, also you can actually leverage satellite to connect as well. So for real, I mean, I saw the picture. It looks like it's highly ruggedized. You could throw it behind a Jeep, go wherever, set it up. So even if there's not any kind of cellular connectivity there, you can connect and get access through Starlink or some other satellite provider.
Yeah, we're actually leveraging a lot of times in these Rover situations, we have three, a couple carriers if they're available, and Starlink. So, and we bond them together, and we have an SD-WAN architecture really on that backhaul, and then that's mapped to the slices we're serving out into that construction site. And the interesting thing is also with these construction sites, they start to be, as you have more Rovers, there's no fiber interconnecting them. So having a cloud-based controller to enable seamless mobility as tools move, and there is a lot more connected tools we're learning coming into these environments where they do need to like track them, and preventative maintenance on some of these bigger machineries, that this connectivity is becoming necessary to track those IoT devices, obviously connected worker use cases and connected machines.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about that, especially for this big, heavy machinery, making sure you're getting the predictive maintenance done by monitoring it through the telematics and things like that is super important these days. So you don't have, unexpected downtime. It's okay to have planned downtime, but staying on top of it, knowing it's connected, being able to do that remotely is hugely important for these organizations.
That's right.
Yeah. All right. I want to switch gears a little bit. A lot of the talk is always about, Wi-Fi 7 or private 5G. Are these competition? Are they complementary? What are we going to do? Clearly, with Wi-Fi, they had Wi-Fi 6E, now Wi-Fi 7 promises a lot higher throughput, improved performance. While private 5Gs, we talked about really predictable coverage, mobility, quality of service. How should enterprises really think about the relationship between these technologies? Are they truly in competition, or do they increasingly form more of a hybrid fabric, as we mentioned earlier?
Yeah, this type of question comes to us a lot, and it to me it reminds me is it Michael Jordan or LeBron James? Who's the GOAT, right? That's kind of how I look at it too. It's all about the era. It's all about what you're using it for. So they are complementary to each other. It's where you have workflow density versus workflow mobility, right? That's really where we separate that, and we try to understand in that conversation of what you're trying to accomplish from a workflow perspective. Everything has Wi-Fi, right? It's in the ecosystem. Everything has Wi-Fi. That means Wi-Fi usually happens first. But if you have everything that has Wi-Fi and it's competing for that rate, that RF, this ends up where 5G is really set to maintain the operations, the things that make the area function, to logistics, to cameras, things that are very important to the business, that they are up all the time. And now you end up having both redundancy. I mean, having mobility redundancy is huge, right? You can start thinking about that in certain applications, because now you are giving that option that never existed before in those enterprises, where you have two mobility solutions right on site, and you can flip between both of them and meet that. Treat it as the same as your enterprise wireless. Maintain that as a mobility fabric is what I kind of look at it from.
Yeah. And I know from speaking with Ed and Todd previously that a lot of these private 5G deployments have been around the neutral host solution. So again, extending the carrier connectivity to the employees to ensure there's connectivity across an entire site as well, right? Hard to reach places where it's highly distributed and so forth, or maybe there isn't a Wi-Fi access point, because in some cases it just becomes cost prohibitive to deploy access points to every potential place in a campus. And so 5G plays a role there. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about, are there certain areas? You said Wi-Fi is the incumbent. So, but I'm wondering if you could talk about where you see like a Wi-Fi 7 really shining, and where you see the private 5G as the clear alternative to be deployed.
Yeah, I mean, everything has Wi-Fi, like I said before, and Wi-Fi 7 really does shine because they opened it up a little bit more, right? You get the 6 gigahertz in there. Now we have MLO, right, capability. We got release 2 coming out, which is going to bring some HARC some capabilities that are very similar to LTE in the beginning in the first place. They're getting better at making it near deterministic, but it's not deterministic still, right? So the masses is always going to utilize that Wi-Fi 7. And if you really think about it, over the last 15 years, most enterprises have gained about 15% of Wi-Fi devices always on them, right? So that ratio of wired to wireless, we're in 2025 now, going into 2026. It is not uncommon to see 20% wired and 80% wireless. So it's just going to constantly, where your Wi-Fi has to get upgraded, these protocols have to get there. Where I see those applications go, again, comes from density, high throughput, right? So if I'm going to use machine vision, right, there's a good spot right there. I need that bandwidth, right? But I'm not going to create that to be a big mobility bubble across the board. It's going to be in one area in a manufacturing that I really need to advance that. If I'm looking at it from 5G and I got AGVs, forklifts that are just going super fast, that's something that Wi-Fi can't keep up. They can't keep that up because you're going so fast, right, in some places that you've already passed 6 access points where 5G already covered those 6 access points. The handover is completely different. And mainly it's because of how Wi-Fi interacts with the access point. The client device is in control of who it's talking to and why it's talking to it. Where 5G, it's completely controlled by the core itself. They say, hey, you're over here right now. You're going to hit this spot. I'm going to already transfer you over to this spot. It's a difference between a guarantee uplink active on when you connect to a 5G versus here's your TX opportunity. I'll let you know when you can speak.
Got it. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm also wondering how, regulatory or other practical challenge impact the environments. I know on the Wi-Fi side, right, Wi-Fi 7 in particular, you've got the AFC, right, the automated frequency coordination that you have to deal with. You've got power constraints potentially, right, indoors, et cetera, right, whether you can go full power or not. On the 5G, we talk about CBRS spectrum and allocation and things like that. You have to have SIM cards. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you see these challenges. Are these really major challenges, or are they all easily overcome by organizations?
With Wi-Fi AFC outdoors with 6 gigahertz, those can be challenging. They're getting better at it. It's just not consistent, right? So we see those in there. It can be challenging. Indoors, not so much, right? It's pretty automatic. Usually you automatically are going with the indoor low power. And of course, I'm just talking United States, right? Once you start going other places, even over the seas, like we had to deal with the 6 gigahertz is not something that we can do yet. But with 5G, private 5G, we kind of look at that as we have to look at the area first. Spectrum can get kind of tight in certain spots, especially when we're talking outdoors. Indoors, not so much. We really don't have any problems with indoors. Again, it all starts with, are you looking for 5G for, want some more bandwidth type of solution, or are you looking from 4G for more coverage type of solution? So when we talk about capacity, then we really kind of pay attention to that AFC piece of it because we're using more channels and we only have so much that we can utilize, to look at that. But most of the time indoor, we really don't have that much of a problem with it.
Got it. That makes sense. I'm wondering, I know a lot of people are trying to figure this out. We talked a lot about hybrid environments. And so I wonder if you could, from a practitioner's perspective, give us an idea of what a good hybrid design looks like, maybe what that will look like moving forward, and how that's different from what organizations are trying to run today.
I mean, I'm an architecture development methodologist. Like that's basically what I do. I follow an ADM process, right? So I need to understand what that workload is going to look like, what that workflow is going to be understood. I would start separating those from that, right? Just the same way from how we would normally do any type of device come in there, understand what the purpose is of what you're trying to do from efficiency. it used to be just everything just throws it on Wi-Fi, right? This is the other option to where you can actually start separating that and start thinking about that from a critical. Is this really critical for the operations to be as mobile as they need to for this vertical? That's what we pay attention to. Why? Understand that. The point is by developing that type of ADM, then now you have a repeat solution why you did it in that organization in the first place, and you can understand it going forward, because I mean mobility matters, right? And that's really where you're kind of going with it when you look at it. It's workflow driven architecture is really what it comes down to. Hybrid is going to be more because as you look back the last 25 years of Wi-Fi, you can see how many Wi-Fi refreshes you've done. And it's getting tighter because the devices, you need the new thing to open up more spectrum, because the yesterday's density design doesn't match today's density design. And you're going to have to start looking at it that way.
Yeah, and in a lot of cases with that new Wi-Fi as well, it's not only the APs you're replacing, but it's the switches that you're replacing to get the requisite power required for the APs as well.
Yeah. And even the type of devices that you have to put in there, right? The purpose that you're doing there. There's a lot of places that we saw that when we replaced it with Wi-Fi 7, they didn't even know they had Wi-Fi 7. They were like, what? And I was just like, yeah, you do. You got Wi-Fi 7. I know that it's out. And they were shocked even from a Wi-Fi 6. I mean, I think that has been the fastest adoption that I've ever seen from a Wi-Fi. A lot of Wi-Fi 6 devices are out there, and still some Wi-Fi 5, some, still there, but very low on the 4, 3, 2, 1s.
Well, and that's a good thing, right? So.
Yeah, man, it's a blessing.
Yeah. I mean, the one other thing I would add, I guess, to this, Bob, is, we're from a best practices to your original question. I think one of our clients is a manufacturer of material handling, forklifts, let's say, and they were having problems with the coverage of Wi-Fi, but they overlaid a private cellular, and it's highly mobile, so they're having problems keeping connectivity, having to rescan, do things. So the workload was very inefficient. It's causing tons of overtime because they still had to get the work done every day. And overlaying it with a couple radios for private 5G, switching the devices to primarily use private 5G, everything just seamlessly works. Overtime hours got dropped in half. Morale improved. However, that Wi-Fi infrastructure is there. So as we move forward and we're looking at infrastructure, just having a base coverage of Wi-Fi, but using private 5G, because the number of radios you need is a lot less. So you could be anywhere from 6 to 12 to 1. So then you have a mobility failover. Bill was talking about this earlier. So now those devices, say something was to happen on the private 5G, they will continue to operate on cellular and switch. So we're seeing that with device capabilities. We see software we can load onto devices, allow it to use it, to give it SD-WAN on devices. Obviously, iOS has multi-path TCP now, but you need applications that use it, and it's only TCP. So we're seeing a little bit more of the evolution of mobility redundancy as an architecture, as practitioners, and as a best practice if you can make it work. And in any use case where you're going in and out of large areas, campus environments, Wi-Fi just is usually not scalable or capable of doing that with power constraints, or you can hang these things.
Got it. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. I wanted to switch gears a little bit. Bill, I know you've got a background in healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
And, right, we all know these healthcare environments are really demanding, especially around mobility and coverage, performance, resilience, as you were just talking to Todd in the manufacturing perspective. But Bill, I wonder if you could share, what's the wireless landscape like in these healthcare environments, the Wi-Fi, private 5G, hybrid architectures? How are they evolving to meet the specific needs of healthcare?
Well, as you look at it, healthcare is all about efficiency, right? So you want to have that nurse, have that physician to be right in front of that patient, take care of what they need to do. And they got to constantly move, right? That's really where that kind of comes from. In the beginning, 2000 to 2010, that was a clinical network, right? That Wi-Fi was considered that clinical network. It was designed that way to give it a clinical flow. But then when we hit that 2010 to 2015, BYOD, BYOD came up, guest solutions came up. This was giving you that hospitality, right? So now this compete of this clinical wireless that we had out there was there, and we were using a lot of wireless voice over wireless, right? That was huge, for nurse call. Make sure they alert, because like I said, it's all about that critical system that needs to alert if something has changed, something's going on, and everybody has to be notified. That's part of the workflow that they do over there. As we hit 2015 to 2020, now it's IoT explosion. It's massive, right? So that percentage has gotten low where Wi-Fi was that clinical piece, right? It's still there. It's still massive. But a lot of things that have increased are sensors, are guest users, are extra devices that physicians and nurses have. With one person that comes in there, a nurse, we averaged it in a hospital, 3.7 devices, right? Just one, right? And that's not even counting the wired device, right? So it's going to keep increasing as it goes. Like I said, that 15% yearly has always happened. So as you bring in the hybrid idea, right? You start bringing in the CBRS, you bring in the private LTE. Now you're basically getting your clinical network back. That's kind of the idea there, because now you can use third-party applications that are over Zebra phones to use that 5G for voice or even for video. You can add, now you can add the nurse call capabilities, as well as the alerting and the sensors, and it covers more. It goes through more. You got to remember, most of these hospitals are not all brand new. So the architecture changed in 2010. They got less dense, but before that, a lot of those buildings were super old. They were very dense, and they were hard to push Wi-Fi in it. It does help with having 5G in there, because they can go a little bit further and do a better penetration through some of that material.
Got it. Well, that certainly makes sense. It sounds like there's a lot of challenges specific to those hospital environments, especially those older ones, large concrete structures, right? Obstructing the, a lot of the wavelengths that are trying to get through to reach people. So it sounds like that hybrid model is definitely something that represents an opportunity for healthcare moving forward.
Yeah, healthcare, especially when you got a healthcare campus, going from one building to another building, that seamless roam was not heard of, right? We worked really hard to try to make that happen, and it was very difficult to make that happen. And vendors, give them credit, but it can only go so far, right? You can't do that with 25 people going over there at the same time and expect it to maintain that roam to be seamless to it. So from a security perspective too, a massive, especially outdoors, that's one thing that has happened a lot since COVID. Security had to be increased for these healthcares. Just a lot more assaults that were happening to nurses and physicians, and that was something that we had to pay attention to. But that meant more sensors, more cameras, more solutions that had to be there, and they had to be mobile, especially during COVID. Everything turned to mobile.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. All right. I want to, Ed, I think I'm going to pull you back into the conversation here. We started by talking about what the market looked like, what was going on, getting an update. Let's take a minute to, as we wrap this up, to look forward. What do you see happening with this hybrid wireless connectivity space over the next couple of years? How do you expect to see the private 5G and Wi-Fi 7 story evolve? What ideas do you, and also maybe Todd, what will that normal hybrid wireless look like for a typical large enterprise environment?
Yeah, I'll start, and certainly Tom and Bill can add, but I mean, we're solving problems today in a current core base that we have that's adopting private cellular. At the same time, we're educating, and we just had one of the biggest healthcare environments in our backyard in last night, and they're looking for, hey, next year we understand that we've got to think ahead, and we want to implement neutral hosts. We want to be able to implement private cellular to overlay what we currently have to solve the issues that Bill was just talking about, because robotics is coming in. They want to make sure they're giving enough connectivity, bandwidth, and performance to the clinical network while they handle patient information and balance all these things. So we're seeing emerging verticals that have been watching the private cellular space and neutral hosts and these technologies and been planning for 26, 27, what they're going to do with that, right? How they're going to overlay their environments. So we see, from a vendor standpoint, this has always been kind of an enterprise, it's another wireless access point in a way, right? And it has value for what private cellular brings, everything we talked about, mobility, large expanses, explosion of devices, all those things. And so some of the vendors are uniquely positioned, we think, to have those conversations, and we're seeing it. We're seeing a big uptick where, hey, we already got the wireless in your environment, but you got a huge manufacturing facility. Maybe our new private cellular offering is better suited for that. And oh, by the way, you can manage it through your network management console that you do your wire network, your wireless, your SD-WAN, your security today. So we're seeing a lot more conversations in that manner where it's more of an enterprise, right? Motion, and people are looking at it. And I don't have to do anything funky or, Elder Frankenstein here. It's like, and what we tell people as we work with them is, hey, figure out, your highest priority use case or your biggest pain point and do a proof of concept and get your feet wet in learning this, right? And the beautiful thing about a Rover is that's just a roving hybrid briefing center we can bring to a site, and we can show you, hey, here are things on a traditional Wi-Fi network. Here's the value and benefit of a private cellular network. Here's how we do Starlink backhaul. It's a hybrid world you're evolving to. Again, it's not an either or. I think the critical thing for us is we do more and more, and we understand and we build practices around this different flavors of connectivity. One of the big things is, and Todd can touch on this, and certainly Bill, is that we have built a management platform called Navigate, and that's built on top of Logic Monitor, which is an industry-leading AI-powered observability and visibility platform. But we've built on top of that for all these things like all the security from Fortinet, Palo, all the big vendors, all things from a private cellular standpoint. After you deploy the right hybrid connectivity, whatever model that is, having the ability to have visibility to the entire environment holistically. And even in some of these healthcare clients, we're talking to them not just scanners and end devices and network switches and routers and firewalls and that, but it's also servers, applications, databases. It's your Epic environment, it's your Cerner environment, it's your Oracle environment, your all scripts. We can give you all that, an end-to-end view. That is of tremendous value that we're seeing at the CIO, CTO level. And we're getting in at those levels, elevating the conversation, because they see the move to the hybrid network is strategic for all the value benefits, operational efficiencies, lowering costs, what the end user impact is. But they got to manage all this stuff. And they only have so many, right? It's not necessarily core competency, and the IT teams are, they're challenged as is for this amazingly complex environment where everything's connected. That conversation with monitoring, I think, is key and critical.
Yeah, I'm super glad to hear you bring that up, because a lot of times everyone thinks about the technology and the new innovative technology, and they think about management is always an afterthought. So that ability to have that complete visibility across those hybrid environments and be able to determine very quickly where there's an issue and in what part of the stack it is, and be able to rectify it is hugely important for organizations that, you're right, we live in an environment where you just can't afford to be down at all.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Good. Todd and Bill, maybe, if you were advising a CIO that's curious about private 5G, but is a little bit cautious, doesn't want to take a risk, what are the practical steps you'd recommend that they take over the next year?
Really just to sit down with somebody knowledgeable like us that deals with both your traditional networking and your existing networking and security, and as well as the cellular component, to just really understand your vision of what you're trying to do. Some of these CIOs on the journey for Industry 4.0, some of them have OT teams and IT teams, and there's culture that's kind of separating them. So just start with a conversation, and like we always do, is just try to learn where there's pain points and impact on the business, and then we can help advise what next steps you should take or not. And the cool thing in the next 3 years or so is a lot of what we're talking about. There is some fragmentation on, policy, where you do that, where you configure things. There's SIMs, physical and a lot of these things are going to start to converge, just to an eSIM. A lot of devices are going to start to come into play. So it's going to continue to get easier, even with, we see enterprise players now that have a common, you just buy a different radio and you're going to have, a way of doing hybrid network, make it much easier. So I think just talking and understanding that and build that roadmap and get comfortable with the technology, not just to see that it works, see how it's deployed, and then see how you can operate it, much like your traditional networking infrastructure. Today, it's not necessarily that easy. That's our value, is we're able to glue these things together. But over time, AI ops is just accelerating. But if you have a multi-vendor environment, you're always going to need something to kind of bring it all together. But so just start with understanding the use cases, and then, really what type of architecture, design methodology, as Bill mentioned, it would work well for you to then stage that into your roadmap and budget.
Excellent. Well, sounds like great advice. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have. So Ed, Todd, Bill, thank you very much. This has been a great discussion.
Thank you,
Awesome.
Bob.
Thank you, Bob.
Yeah. So, my takeaways, it's really clear private 5G is not about replacing Wi-Fi, but about extending what's possible when you bring these technologies together in a thoughtful hybrid architecture, whether it's leveraging cows at these large public events, Rover deployments at remote sites. I think, we're really starting to see really tangible, practical examples of how connectivity can unlock new levels of productivity and safety. So for our viewers, if you're exploring the next step in your wireless journey, whether it's Wi-Fi 7, private 5G, or a hybrid approach, you're in healthcare, construction, or entertainment, the key takeaway is to start with the use cases and outcomes that you want, and then design the right mix of technologies, management, and partners to support them. Thanks again to our guests from STEP, and thank all of you for watching. For more insights into building out a robust hybrid wireless solution, please visit the STEP website.